Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential Podcast, brought to you by Corewell Health. I am Andrew Kahn.
I'm Ryan Zook.
And I'm Aaron McMahon.
The Michigan football team looked as good as it has all season in a resounding win at Maryland. It sets up a high-stakes showdown with number 1 Ohio State. What did the Wolverines show on Saturday, and was it enough to inspire confidence against the Buckeyes? We discuss that and more coming up on Wolverine Confidential. Okay, Aaron McMahon and Ryan Zook, good to be with you two here on Sunday evening, November 23rd, a day after the Michigan football team's 45-20 win at Maryland. And guys, this was never going to be a trap game. We talked about it on the preview pod. Like, for one, Michigan just isn't good enough to overlook anyone. We all picked Maryland to keep it relatively close, not because we thought Michigan would be looking ahead to Ohio State, but because Michigan hadn't played all that well in recent weeks. Last second win over Northwestern the Saturday before, narrow win over Purdue the game before that. Michigan State, they didn't look particularly good. So it had been a while. So what did Michigan do so well Saturday? Aaron, we'll start with you since you were there.
They did a lot. We talked about the need for the passing game to kind of continue what they had done against Northwestern, and they did. They moved the football with relative ease through the air and on the ground. That might have been the biggest surprise to me because they didn't have Jordan Marshall at their disposal. They held him out for obvious reasons. Justice Haynes obviously didn't play. Yet they were still able to run for more than 200 yards and 4 touchdowns with I say this nicely, a ragtag group of running backs. So it was a complete game. I think we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, whether Michigan could put it together for 4 quarters, and by and large they did, really, on both sides of the ball. There's that one drive to open the game where Michigan's defense didn't look so hot, and then after that they did a pretty good job. So it was a type of performance you wanted to see going into Ohio State. And I asked Sharon more after the game. Michigan was prepared to win that game by any means necessary, right? They needed to win the game, whether it was by 1 or 40. And yet they were still able to put together what was, I thought, a relatively complete performance. When they really needed it most, right? They need momentum, and you can debate whether momentum's a thing or not, but they're feeling good about themselves coming out of this one and going into, quote unquote, the most important game of the year.
Ryan, what did you like from Michigan?
I like that they put up 45 points without their top 2 running backs. Bryce or Jordan Marshall was listed as, he warmed up and it seemed like he was available, but he didn't play. And Bryson Cusdahl, absolutely, it seemed to me he stole the show. Like, it's like a guy that's a former walk-on, 2-star recruit, and he had a lot of impressive runs, in my opinion. 3 touchdowns, 100 yards on the ground on 20 carries. And you could just tell, like, Michigan trusted a guy that I feel like most schools would not be like, okay, we're down our top 2 running backs, 2 former top 100 recruits. We're going to need to just abandon our game plan and do something else. No, they stuck with it and leaned on him, and he was really impressive. I thought he showed really good burst, had some good vision, was able to had a knack for finding the end zone. And the passing game was good. That Bryce Underwood made some good throws, but I thought it was the Bryce Cusdahl throw our show for most of the game, and that was really impressive too. And especially if it seems like they're going to get Jordan Marshall back too for the Ohio State game. It's everything you wanted to see from a Michigan offense, in my opinion.
And his involvement that first drive, Michigan drive, was very emblematic of that. I mean, everyone's going to remember the fade throw from Bryce Underwood to Andrew Marsh in the corner for the 12-yard touchdown pass. But the rest of that drive was all Cusdahl. I mean, there was an 8-yard screen to him. He had 4 other carries, including 1 for 18 yards and 7 yards. He was a big reason as to why they're able to. And they were working on a short field to begin with because Maryland tried the onside kick to catch Michigan off guard. And credit to Michigan special teams, they answered the bell and they didn't screw anything up. So Michigan was working from short yardage, short field right there. But 'Cause they'll, they were unafraid of giving him the load, and he got 20 carries, and he certainly could have had more if it was a closer contest. So yeah, I mean, credit to him. He answered the bell well. I mean, we were wondering how he would look in this situation, and quite frankly, he looked like another like Michigan running back prepared to to carry the load, and he certainly did so.
Guys hit on really all the important things. I'll pick up where you left off with the running game. I mean, I think we've done this on this podcast, but we'll say it again. It's time to give credit for sure to Michigan's offensive line as run blockers, to Michigan's coaching staff, Tony Alford, the running backs coach, and of course, the running backs themselves. But I mean, I'm starting to think maybe one of us could crack 100 yards behind this line, because it doesn't seem to matter who's out there. But that's what they're doing. They're posting triple digit rushing yards just week in and week out. And this time it was a former walk on doing it. So the balance that they showed was huge. That drive right away again. From both sides of the ball, Michigan's defense settled in after that, which we've seen a lot this year, and Michigan able to take advantage of the short field, and that's the first point scored against Maryland on an opening drive all season. Again, helps when you start on their side of the field, but still, yeah, very, very impressive. Great way to start the game. And they just kept rolling. I mean, they just kept going. 45 points. You have to be, you have to be kind of cooking all game to get there. I thought Bryce Underwood, let's talk about him for a second. Very, very good. 16 of 23, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 183 passing yards in the first half. So like when they needed it, when they were, when that's when the game was decided, basically, he was awesome. And then, they just didn't throw that much in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first half was very much a continuation, I think, of what we saw against Northwestern in terms of them, moving the football through the air. I mean, again, the connection with Andrew Marsh was there. He was able to get some other receivers involved this week, which was nice to see after last week. I mean, Marlon Klein had I think 3 catches. McCulley had a couple of big catches. They were able to, again, work Zach Marshall in there. Even as I said, Cusdell and Max Bresson got a catch. So they were clearly trying to diversify, the targets a little bit more this week, because quite frankly, you want to get too predictable, right? With Andrew Marsh and Underwood's connection there. So it was quite the sight to see from the passing game. I thought Underwood again looked very good this week. He almost had an interception with another a cross-body throw. Probably shouldn't have been made, and Stromore said that afterwards. He got into Bryce a little bit about that. You could tell that Michigan was trying to take what the defense was giving to them, and that's been kind of a talking point the last couple of weeks for Bryce in the Michigan passing game. They started well against Northwestern doing that a few weeks ago. Obviously, the turnovers plagued them late. I guess the main difference this week, right? There just weren't any turnovers. It was a relatively clean performance. He hit some of the guys when he needed to. He missed a couple of guys as well. That could have been for some big plays. But again, I know Michigan doesn't want to use this excuse, but Underwood still is a freshman. He's still trying to pick things up. But you could tell, we talked about whether he had hit a freshman wall a couple of weeks back. He's clearly starting to bounce back and looking and playing very sharply.
He also got away with one. I mean, he 100%.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
that's
Ryan.
that could have been an insane game changer right there. I mean, if they take that to the house and it's a 14-7 game instead of like just an incomplete pass on first down and Michigan goes down and score a touchdown, like that could have been a huge game changer. But like it's Maryland had a chance to make the play. They did not. And Bryce bounced back, I thought, really admirably after that and literally just looked comfortable ever since that. He bounced back perfectly from that gaff. Like you don't want to see that. That's a layup, you would think, for an interception. But yeah, other than that, I don't think he really put the ball in harm's way, and Michigan just rolled after that. But you have to wonder, like, if Maryland takes that back and it's a 14-7 game, how does the rest of the game play out? But again, they didn't. Bryce Underwood responded, and the Wolverines were off to the races after that.
Right. Don't need to spend too much time on what didn't happen, but that was a play that, you figure Ohio State will make, for example, next week.
Right. Yes. Yes.
The big time target, of course, in this game, again, Andrew Marsh, and BTN showed a graphic that since October 1st, which for Michigan is the Wisconsin game, which seems like a long time ago because it was, Marsh is the Big Ten's leading receiver. I mean, the top pass catcher in a Big Ten that features, I mean, these studs at Ohio State, and Washington's got a guy. Like every team's got a guy. Well, Michigan's guy is Marsh. It's not McCulley, it's Marsh, and he's been the most productive pass catcher in the entire Big Ten. It's remarkable, his rise.
It is, and I don't think Bryce will admit it, like, publicly, but I think he enjoys playing with him. Like, Marsh does a very good job. He's a speedy guy. He can get open. He can make big plays, and I think part of it too is that freshman camaraderie, right? They're both true freshmen playing for the starting for the first time, and there's clearly a connection there, a relationship there, and he's taken the ball and ran with it, man. He's looked really good so far, and again, he picked up another good game on Saturday. Had a couple nice catches. His knack for just getting open, right? Like it's not like he's necessarily making all these 50-50 balls or making these
Yeah.
spectacular plays, and he's had a few. Don't get me wrong, but like he's just getting open, and Underwood's hitting him, and his yards after contact have been great. It speaks to his speed and everything else. I mean, he's been the welcome, I think. I don't say surprise, but like they needed someone like him to emerge. I think for this offense to take off, and it's certainly done so with him. At this in the slot.
Yeah, I mean, just so smooth, so reliable. It's like it's hard to think that he's just a freshman. Because every time Underwood looks his way, it seems like I mean, he's confident and like he's going to make the catch and like he's in the right spot. And if it's in a certain radius, have confidence that he's going to make the catch, which is really rare for any Michigan receiver in the last five years or so, let alone a true freshman. Like Andrew said, it's truly incredible.
And then, you probably don't want to put too much on the plate of a true freshman, but Sharon Moore really had no choice this week with Samaj Morgan not making the trip. Special teams ace Joe Taylor not available either. Well, Marsh was the one returning punts and kicks, and I thought he did a great job. I mean, a lot of invisible yardage gained or protected by Marsh's decisions as a returner.
Yeah, I mean, he had, 14-yard punt return, which actually I think is a season high at this point, given the inability of Samaj Morgan this year. But yeah, a couple of good decisions, right? I think there was one punt return where I think he kind of caught it on the line on a line. He could have let it sail into the end zone and picked it up, and or he went and caught it, and I think he got some extra yardage out of the play. So you can tell that Zook said he's a smooth player, and he is. I think his decision making is very good. And look, he's a playmaker, right? Like he was already doing kick returns, and Michigan saw what he could do there. Yes, it's another thing on his plate, and you obviously there's increased the risk of injury and everything else. But the same token, you want your best players on the field as much as possible. And with Michigan special team just unable to make a whole lot, do a whole lot this year. It was certainly a breath of fresh air with him, seeing him back there because he's someone who can not only bring it haul in the ball, but like he can actually gain some yardage out of it too.
It's hard to I don't know how to say this, but like I don't want to say like Sharon and his staffs are bad coaches, but like I mean, with Andrew March, it's like you saw early on that he had this capability, and yet you continued to put Samaj Morgan back there as punt return. It's like, and you took him how many games to have him be a top three receiver in this rotation? It's like, I get you want to like ease someone in, but like you got to put your best guys out there. And it's like, he's now your number one receiver, and he started the year like fourth, fifth on the depth chart. It's like what was missing early on? They didn't see that. And same thing with special teams. It's like why did you continue to put Samaj Morgan back there when like Andrew Marsh seems like he's a reliable guy. Like, and we've seen what he can do as a playmaker, and he hasn't made any mistakes as far as like fumbling or anything, or like not coming up and catching the ball when he shouldn't. Like, I don't know. I'm starting to think like, man, maybe they bundled this situation a little bit as far as getting the best guys in the best spots.
It's a complicated issue, right? Because Sharon and his staff have obviously established themselves as like players coaches, right? They want to give guys second chances. They want to give them other opportunities. That was certainly the case with Samaj, right? Like, I feel like the leash was almost too long with him. Like they should have shortened it earlier and taken him out of the game. But and we've heard this before from coaches, and Jim Harbaugh, always was always concerned about this. But you don't want to always put your best players out there and punt and kick returns all the time because they risk injury. I mean, you saw it to Ronnie Bell many years ago, and the question afterwards, well, why was he returning punts? Why was he doing this? So I get from where Sharon's point of view is on the situation because he was already returning kicks. He was taking on more in the passing game, and then you stick him in with punt return. That's just more on the plate. But at the same token, you're right, right? Like you see what he can do, and you see the plays he can make and how dynamic he can be. And it's like, why didn't you do this earlier? Why didn't you do this at the beginning of the year? So it's a catch 22. And Samaj is a guy who's been around the program a long time. He had made plays early on as a freshman and during his early years. And you don't want to pull the leash out from underneath him, but it was certainly time, and certainly the case could have been made that he should have done it earlier. There's no doubt about it.
5 catches for 76 yards and the aforementioned touchdown, which was a beautiful catch and throw to open the scoring for Michigan on the day. But I want to talk about defense, but I've got any final thoughts on offense? I've got one, and it's Marlon Klein, 3 catches, 37 yards. Like, hey, welcome back, Marlon Klein. It's his biggest game since the season opener, when we thought, okay, this guy maybe isn't Colston Loveland, but they've found a reliable tight end target again. And it just hasn't been the case. I know he's been hurt, and now Underwood seems to really just be looking Marsh's way so often. But the more weapons you have, the better. And good to see Klein kind of have not a breakout game, but a return performance, not a breakout game, but another a solid performance for the first time in months.
And doing it at the right point, like we talked about this being the game before Ohio State, and you want get him going for that game and have as many weapons at your disposal as possible in the passing attack. There was a lot of talk last week about the tight ends and the usage and everything else. Yes, Michigan doesn't have Colson Loveland. They don't have a tight end they can throw to a ton and lean on in case of emergency, but they've been able to scatter the targets out to multiple guys this year. Zach Marshall's been more involved. Obviously, you mentioned Marlon Klein. I think it's setting up nicely for a situation Saturday against Ohio State where they can utilize multiple tight ends in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean they got their tight ends more involved, but and Zach Marshall had a couple of catches too, but he almost got Andrew Marsh killed there on one like a receiver screen, and Andrew Marsh got blown up, and it was just a complete misassignment by Zach Marshall on the perimeter too, and it was like, oh my god, that could have been disastrous. But yeah, overall a pretty more productive day from the tight ends. The week after we talked with tight ends coach Steve Trasula, who emphatically said, "Hey, no, we're difference makers in this offense, even if it's not making plays with making catches and getting the ball downfield. We're still a big part of the offense."
All right, let's talk about the defense for Michigan, which I thought was really good in this game. Again, allows the opening drive touchdown where they give up the big pass play on an offsides, and you're like, here we go again with kind of the mental errors, but settled in after that. And the big story to me, as we talked about this in the preview, Maryland had only allowed 4 sacks all season, and Michigan gets 3 in this game, as well as pressure at other times. I thought that was huge. And then, of course, got the interception as well.
Especially against again, Malik Washington's another freshman quarterback who's I think still learning his ways. And he's as you said, he had been only sacked 3 times all this year this season. So, like, he had looked like he'd grown comfortable in the pocket, and when you can make him uncomfortable, especially a quarterback of that young, you force him to do things he normally doesn't do. So, Michigan's pressure was very good, and it played out right in the stat line. He was 19 of 39 for 210, a touchdown, interception. He made some good plays. He looked very good at times, but there were others where he clearly looked rushed. Didn't have a whole lot going on in the backfield, and Michigan's defense showed up again. We've documented their first drive woes at times this year, and it was certainly the case Saturday where they let Maryland march on the field. But I thought again they responded very well. Play calling was good. They got a lot of guys in the game, and they had a lot of guys making plays. The Maryland guys showed up too. Jayshon Barham, sack. Derek Moore, sack. A lot of disruption up front, so it was another good day for the defense. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't great, but it got the job done. And now the pressure's gonna be on Wink Martindale to try and duplicate what he was able to do last year.
I will say we talked about beforehand about like Michigan's drop issues before the game and like Maryland's in the same boat. Maryland had another game where they had some passes like that were in the fingertips and they weren't able to haul in, and that could have played a difference in the game too. There was one in the end zone, should have been caught, didn't go, and like Michigan or Maryland was treated with 4 drops, and they had already been like tops in the country and drops all year. So it's like Michigan's secondary was a little bit leaky at times, and it's like, yeah, you lived with it because it didn't burn them, and Michigan's offense was able to kind of provide a little bit of enough of a cushion. But against Ohio State, like Jeremiah Smith isn't dropping some of those passes. Like any of those top receivers aren't dropping it. So it's like I think the defense needs to be better against Ohio State if they're going to have any shot at winning this week.
We've mostly talked about the good from Michigan's game against Maryland because there was a lot of it, but how about the things that were concerning? You mentioned maybe some of the things that were outside of their control that went their way, whether it was the drop balls from Maryland's receivers, or we mentioned the dropped potential pick six. How about how Michigan handled or mishandled the end of the first half? I mean, what the heck was going on there? Did Sharon Moore talk about that after, Aaron? Because you get the ball 48 seconds, you pick up 17 yards on the first play, you're moving a little bit, and now all of a sudden you just go into half with the timeout in your pocket.
Yeah, he was not asked about it afterwards. My understanding is, and I didn't catch the TV broadcast, but he was asked about it at halftime. He basically owned up to the mistake. And I mean, this isn't the first time we've seen that, right? You would hope by this point in the year that stuff is fixed, and it clearly isn't. So if you're a Michigan fan, you better hope you don't get in a end of or end of game situation where timeouts and the clock becomes an issue, because Michigan's shown, whether it's Sherman Moore or Biff Poggi, whoever's running the show, they just can't seem to figure out how to use the timeouts and to maximize their opportunities and possessions. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it didn't matter. But again, you don't want to get in a situation where that stuff does matter, because it could cost you points or opportunities.
Yeah, against a better team like Ohio State, like missed field goals or botched timeouts or just clock management. Like you can't afford. Last year they beat Ohio State because I mean Dominic Zavada was money on his field goal attempts. Ohio State missed one or two attempts, and like that's the difference in the game. Like Michigan's going to need to play a perfect game against Ohio State if they're going to win, and so like they didn't do that against Maryland, which is okay because Maryland's not a very good team, but against the number one team in the country that has just absolutely dominated everybody this year, it's going to be a different story.
Life is beautiful and fragile. We fall. We get tired. And sometimes we get sick. But with Corewell Health, we are also strong. We fight disease. We battle cancer. We come together. We come back. We push forward. When the body breaks, we break through. Corewell Health. We can.
Something else of concern, of course, was like who wasn't there. Jordan Marshall sat out, and it was interesting, especially with like the pregame report and what Aaron reported on the from Michigan side of it as far as the availability report, questionable, and it kind of was like, let's see if we can win this game, move the ball without him, and they did, they could, and they did, and now it looks great because now it does seem like he is healthy and will be back for the Ohio State game. Aaron, you can chime in on that in a moment whether that's the case, but there's other guys that didn't make the trip, and Sharon kind of gave the standard just working through something. There were some wild rumors out there about guys. Samaj Morgan, again, I don't think needs to be. Let's face it, we already talked about he's been replaced. He's been one-upped by Marsh, so maybe not as much of a fact. But Ernest Hausman is a veteran linebacker. Led this team in tackles last year, I think. So yeah, that's a guy you want to have available. The linebackers. Max Bredesen got hurt in this game. Like, what's the latest on Michigan's? I guess the status of some of their key personnel.
Yeah, they're still banged up. We'll start with Jordan Marshall. He did make the trip, obviously. He was in uniform pregame. He was going through a lot of the pregame stuff with the running backs. But I noticed early on he wasn't doing pass protection stuff. There's a point in the game about 45 minutes to an hour before where most of the positions come out in the field and kind of do their own individual stuff as a group. Running backs will do footwork and just handoffs and everything else. But there's a point where they do the pass protection stuff where they line up against guys and actually physically push the other player. Jordan wasn't doing that stuff, so it makes me wonder where the shoulder is at this point. And then as the pregame warmups progressed, you could tell his role was being was smaller and smaller. And it was at the point where we're about 15, 20 minutes for the game, and it was clear he wasn't going to play. Afterwards, yeah, Bryson Cusdell kind of let the hat out of the bag a little bit. He was listed. Jordan Marshall was listed as questionable going in. Sharon said he could have played if they needed him to, but the decision was to hold him out. Well, Bryson Cusdell was apparently told early on last week that Jordan Marshall probably wasn't going to play. And hey, it's your time to shine.
Classic.
So yeah, I think he was available in an emergency situation, right? If Michigan needed him late, they needed a run, he was going to be there. So, Sharon made it sound like Jordan Marshall is going to play on Saturday. I think he's going to prepare. He's preparing as if he's going to play. I think he will play. What capacity he'll be, I don't know. Will he be 100%? I doubt it. But they're going to run him out there, and they're going to try and get as much out of him as he can. As for the other guys, Ernest Hausman is a question mark at this point. We don't know what's going on. He's been a little more active on social media the last week than he has been the entire season. He started a podcast, talking religion. He's had some statements put out there. Very odd situation. He's not. I don't think he's on the docket to speak to the media this week with the rest of the captains. So we don't know where that sits with him. And then the others, Bredesen's interesting. He played. Obviously played Saturday, came out of the game at some point, and then he returns with crutches and a boot on his right foot. So I don't know what his status is going to be. He is expected to talk to us this week, so maybe we get more clarity on that. But I don't know at this point where he stands. A lot of question marks going in. Rod Morgan didn't suit up on Saturday. Will he choose to play against Ohio State? I don't know. So Michigan's dealing with a lot of banged up guys, a lot of question marks heading into this one, as is Ohio State. I mean, their receivers been out. Potentially, maybe they were being held out for just health, just for rest reasons. But either way, we'll see. Hopefully, we get more clarity as the week goes on. But I'm not counting on it.
Happy the game week, man. This is this is what it's all about.
It's here, and maybe 25 minutes in, maybe we've already talked too much about Maryland without hitting on Ohio State, but I feel like we've sprinkled it in throughout. But yes, it is here. Michigan has won 4 straight in this series, as we know. I saw maybe 11-point underdog. Aaron, is that right? Early line.
That's right. Yeah.
And I mean, that's not half, but it's close to last year. I think it was 18, 19, 20 at one point in that game against Ohio State that they went and won in Columbus. So like after that, man, you can't rule Michigan out at all. Again, we'll get into this in the preview pod, but just Ohio State's game plan. What do they do? Because they were pretty much 50-50 run pass last year, and that was a major problem. And this year, again, statistically, Michigan's run defense is their strength. Ohio State's passing better than their running. But, are they do they stick with, the rushing attack? I don't know, to try to prove something, or just poor coaching, or just a lack of aggressiveness will be very interesting to see. But just let's zoom out here a little bit first. AP poll is out. Again, that's not the one that's going to determine Michigan's playoff fate. That's the playoff rankings, but they jumped up 3 spots. They're up to 15. Texas, they passed Texas. They passed USC. Georgia Tech slid down a bit. Like some key teams, that Oregon USC result was what they wanted. I think it maybe makes it a little more clear now. Aaron said, hey, they're getting in if they beat Ohio State. Starting to look like maybe that's, again, they got the results they needed over the weekend to make that a reality.
Yeah, and Utah almost should have lost to Kansas State, and that would have helped their situation too. So Michigan, yeah, moved up 3 spots, about what you'd expect after a win like that. They didn't impress the pollsters last week after the narrow win over Northwestern, but they handled business Saturday against Maryland. So it's certainly going to help their case, I think, with the playoff committee. My expectation is they're probably somewhere around 15 as well when the rankings come out Tuesday night, and it puts them like in the driver's seat to get into that. I don't want to say top 12 because you got group of 5 and you got some potential conference champions who maybe won't be in the top 12. But I think if Michigan can comfortably get in the top 10, I think they're in the playoff. But again, that requires them to beat Ohio State on Saturday. So they got to handle business first. Sharon's going to probably get a lot of questions, and players too. They'll probably get a lot of questions this week about where they stand in the rankings and what the resume looks like and whether a win over Ohio State should be enough. But I think at this point, the only thing Michigan can control is beating the Buckeyes on Saturday, and that's where this thing starts and ends, right? Like they beat them, there's a potential to get in the playoff, the Big Ten title game. They beat them, there's a really good shot to get in the playoff. But yeah, it's certainly shaping up for them to squeak in here if they can beat the Buckeyes Saturday.
So, do you think it's guaranteed then? I know we haven't seen the play on Tuesday, but are you calling your shot? Like, if Michigan beats Ohio State on Saturday, they are for sure in the playoff.
Will they get in? I can't guarantee that. Should they get in? Yes. I think there's no doubt about it. We said this last week, a 10-win Michigan team with a win over the number one team in the country at the end of the year, winning 6 straight games too. I mean, they're riding it. They're playing good football at the right time. So should they get in? Yes. I don't know. Will they? I don't know. I'm not in the committee room. I'm not making those decisions.
The other piece of this is that necessarily wouldn't be the final data point in their resume, because the Big Ten did release the various scenarios, tiebreakers for the Big Ten championship. All of them that involve Michigan getting into it require them to beat Ohio State. 2 of the 3 then require Indiana losing to Purdue this Saturday. That's not happening. So me saying that, there's really only one scenario, and it's Michigan beating Ohio State, Indiana beating Purdue, and then the other team that's in the mix for this, Oregon, losing to Washington, which is not crazy. I don't think. I mean, that game is at Washington, rivalry game. Washington's been playing better. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, and that would mean it's Michigan, Indiana in a Big Ten championship game. Now, again, Aaron told us on the podcast last week, he read that quote from the chair about, how that shouldn't hurt you. So if that's the case, fine. Obviously, that'd be a good loss, as they say, to Indiana, but it might not be 10-2 Michigan at that point. It would be potentially 10-3 Michigan, and whether they deserve to get in.
Yeah, that would be the dicey situation, and I think that's the most likely scenario, right, for Michigan getting into the Big Ten championship game is beating Ohio State and then Washington beating Oregon. Yeah, and that's what you're rooting for if you're a Michigan fan. But it starts with Michigan beating Ohio State on Saturday. If that doesn't happen, all this talk doesn't matter, right? Michigan's not in the playoff; they're not going to play for a Big Ten title game. So, yeah, and it'd be another data point too. Say Michigan does get into the title game and plays Indiana, and they can beat them. There's another opportunity to make a move. So I don't know. We're all talking a lot of hypotheticals at this point, what ifs. But the reality of the situation is Michigan feels like they're playing some of their best football at the moment. They are going into a game against their rival with an opportunity to continue all their goals and potentially move past what many of us in the media and what many of the outside people before the season started were saying. Michigan goes 9-3. They get out of the play. They're not in the playoff, et cetera, et cetera. So Michigan's right there where expectations are. Can they exceed them? Can they make a move? Can they surprise some folks? It's now the question. I think this Michigan team is clearly better than they were last year, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They got a better quarterback. They got some playmakers in the passing game. Can they beat Ohio State again? Absolutely. Well, am I going to pick them to win? I don't know. Let's check back Wednesday when we record our next podcast.
Exactly. I mean, again, we're talking about Michigan as a double-digit underdog. Of course, Indiana, again, they're like 28 or something point favorites against Purdue. Again, that's not happening. And Oregon, even they're a touchdown favorite against Washington. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But yeah, we all predicted 9-3. And I mean, I said the losses were going to be Oklahoma, USC, and Ohio State. You guys were, say the same thing. I know you said 9-3. I don't know if it was specifically those games, but certainly we all thought Ohio State was going to be a loss. I'll start by saying I'm leaning more towards Michigan on the spectrum after what we just saw this past week. I mean, it feels a lot like last year now, right? Where they kind of put it all together in the week before. And, you could see a pathway to victory like they talk about on election night for Michigan in this game, with the rushing attack and trying to, an electric quarterback freshman that's only getting better. So I'm not tipping my hand saying I'm going to pick Michigan to pull off the upset in this game, but I think it's less crazy than it was this time last week, this time, 2 weeks ago, 3, like it's they're trending in the right direction, but yeah, am I underrating Ohio State?
I just feel like Michigan's going to need to play pretty much a perfect game because this Ohio State defense has been nothing short of sensational all year, averaging 200 yards against, which is like 40 low or fewer than any other team in the entire country. It's just this defense has been so sensational. it's like you need to be perfect if Michigan's to pull off an upset. And I get last year was similar, but again, it was we talked about the field goal kicking and the Dominic Zavada. He made 2 field goals, one of them a long field goal. Ohio State's kicker missed one. So like I don't feel like Michigan feels good about its kicking game right now too. So it's tough to gauge at this point. Maybe later in the week when we can digest a little bit more, but right now it's still hard to predict a clear pathway for Michigan to win this game, in my opinion.
Glass half full. This game is at home. They're coming off a, you could say, a complete game against Maryland. They have a quarterback who is, I think, an intriguing variable in this game who can move the ball with his legs and make plays through the air. You've got a dynamite receiver who is emerging as a future star. You have a running back stable who's shown they can run the football. Glass half empty. They're still making mistakes from a coaching standpoint, from a decision-making standpoint. Bryce Underwood's still putting the ball in harm's way at times, and they still haven't beaten they don't have a marquee win. They haven't beaten a top-tier team yet. So you could go either which way here. It's going to be fascinating to play out. I'm more bullish on them now than I was a week ago or maybe a couple of weeks ago after the Purdue and Northwestern game. Do they have it in them, I guess, right? They're a young team and we've said this, they're a young team, so trying to figure themselves out, but they are starting to figure themselves out. Do they have it in them to beat Ohio State? I don't know. We'll see. They could. I don't know if they will.
I'm going to push back a little on Zook's perfect game comment. I mean, I just look at last year. Michigan did not play a perfect game last year. I mean, I'm remembering those possessions, getting down to, inside the Ohio State 5, coming up with no points, throwing an interception.
Not offensively, it wasn't perfect. No way.
Yeah, throwing an interception on their own, inside their own 20, throwing an interception at the Ohio State goal line, like left a lot of points on that board. I mean, talked to Davis Warren for a story a couple weeks ago, and he was like, yeah, we kind of feel like we should have won by more. And then Ohio State goes on to win the national championship. Now, you can say they're better this year. You can, and a lot of people have. They haven't lost yet this year. They've just been pretty dominant. But that's they still beat a national championship team on the road, not playing very well. There's a much better situation at quarterback. And it's got to be a little bit mental at this point, after the first year, especially then the second year. I mean, how many years can you say Ohio State's got to be the more motivated team now to get it done? Like that's been the case now for several years, and it hasn't panned out for them. So, at this point it's more, is it a little mental for the returners and for Ryan Day?
That's what I was as you started talking about, that's what my mind was going. Like, where is Ohio State's psyche going into this one? Because they've had really good teams in the past, arguably, talent-wise, definitely better teams than Michigan, yet they still were unable to win. Michigan always seemed to have their number the last couple of years. Does that continue? Does Ohio State simplify the game plan? Does Ryan Day throw his pride? Like how is Saturday going to play out? I don't know. It makes it fascinating because this time last year we were talking about this game. I think everyone was expecting Michigan to get blown out. They didn't stand a chance. The season was a failure. But yet here they are right now, still with all this stuff to play for, all these possibilities, and here's Ohio State coming off a national championship and 11-0 and number one team in the country. So I don't know. I'm intrigued by this one more so than last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think the intriguing part, well, I mean, for Ohio State, you are coming off a national championship. You're right in the table since then. It's like, okay, yeah, like we lost against Michigan last year, but like we're a different program. We learned from our mistakes. Like there's nothing stopping us now. That's the if Ohio State didn't win the national championship last year and didn't look so dominant this year, I'd be more bullish on Michigan. But the fact they just seem like a different program that just has been working towards ending this losing streak against Michigan this year. It's just like, man, this is a wagon coming in and a full steam train. It's like, how is Michigan going to slow them down? I don't know. Maybe they could. I wouldn't be completely shocked if they do, but like at this point, it just seems like Ohio State is just the best team in college football, and it would need to. Michigan would need not a miracle, but a really, really, it would be a long shot for them to win this game, in my opinion, at this point.
Well, we'll have our official predictions. We'll have more preview content, plenty of stuff coming out of Schembechler Hall this week from you two guys on mlive.com/Wolverines. Let's move on to the winter sports here to kind of wrap up. Zook, I saw Michigan hockey got the sweep. They kind of ended that run of winning the Friday game and losing Saturday.
Yeah, no, back-to-back victories, 5-2 win on Friday, 8-1 on Saturday, and they're probably going to be the number one team in the country come the new rankings on Monday afternoon. So they're rolling right now, first place in the Big.
Who'd they beat this weekend? Who
I
was it,
think
by the way?
that would be the Scarlet and Gray Ohio State Buckeyes. So they beat them by a
There you go.
touchdown, 8-1 on Saturday. I don't know if that's foreboding anything for the football field this week, but yeah, they absolutely dominated Ohio State this weekend, and yeah, they look. Yeah, this Michigan hockey team looks like they've turned a corner, and they're on a mission this year, and it'll be interesting to see where they can take this.
And then Michigan basketball, I will not be with you guys at Schembechler this week because I'll be in Las Vegas covering the men's team, which is playing in the Players Era Championship. Major preview to come by the time you're listening to this on mlive.com/Wolverines. But they open again against San Diego State, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time on True TV. Find that on your provider. And that's hopefully that's the tip time. It could be a little later based on the game before Auburn, Oregon. The next night it's a little earlier. I think 7:30 Eastern time. All these times a little 3 hours earlier in Vegas. And then game 3 TBD probably Wednesday, and certainly against a high quality team. But we'll see who that is based on how they do. Let's see if Michigan can shoot the three a little better than they have recently, and expect them to play a bunch of guys. They've been doing it already. Why wouldn't you do it in a early season tournament when you're playing potentially 3 games in 3 days? We talked about the Michigan women going to play number 1 UConn in the state of Connecticut. They lose by 3. I mean, what a game this was. They're down big early to 22-5 after the first quarter. They're down 20 early in the second half, and they just kind of grind away with the zone defense, get a lot of stops, and Silas Swords catches fire from 3. That was Michigan's last 9 points, were 3 Swords threes, often coming out of timeouts, sideline out of bounds plays, and each one more difficult than the last. Michigan gets a stop at the end, but then Swords gets stripped. But then Michigan steals it back. They pass ahead to Tayela Delphos, and a UConn defender got her hand in the cookie jar there at half court, which I don't know what you're doing there on a shot like that. Michigan bench pleading for a foul. Don't ask me, watching on TV, but ended up not really getting a shot off that would have been a heave and chance to send it to overtime. Delphos, by the way, came back with a monster game, 20 plus points for the first time in her career in the win over Layla Filia and Syracuse today, Sunday. So, they got the split. That was like priority number 1. Make sure you beat Syracuse and avoid a potentially bad loss. But once again, prove they could play with anyone in the country. Number 1, Connecticut hadn't lost since early February of last season, defending national champs, and they take them right down to the wire. So, this program is on the rise, number 6 in the national polls. I wouldn't expect that to change too much. It really shouldn't. I'm sure some voters will just see they lost and move some teams behind them ahead of them, but really shouldn't. The men, at 7 should probably hold about that for, going into this tournament in Vegas. So Thanksgiving is always kind of the somewhat unofficial start of college basketball season. A lot of high profile tournaments, not quite the same as it used to be. Maui isn't what it used to be. This is it now. This is the Players Era has the best collection of teams. So I'll be there to cover that. You guys will be all over Schembechler Hall. You excited for these interviews and stuff, or do guys kind of remind me like do the Sharon and players kind of get a little more tight-lipped this week, or afraid to give bulletin board material, or is the excitement of the game just palpable?
Jim was always hesitant to say much, although he usually was hesitant to say much. They're definitely more tight-lipped. Occasionally, you get something out of a player. The change this week compared to the rest of the weeks in terms of the media responsibilities is we only get 2 days instead of 3. So we get Schroen on Monday, and we get players on Tuesday. We don't get the assistants on Wednesday like we normally do during a normal game week, so it's a little shortened week. I suspect Sharon will be asked all the typical questions tomorrow about Ryan Day and the success Michigan's had and what this game means for the season. So from an interview standpoint, it is what it is. Let's fast forward to Saturday. Let's play some football.
No, yeah, I agree, and I'm not expecting anything that interesting from Michigan's viewpoint this week. I mean, they know Ohio State's the number one team in the country. They know they need to play a really clean, crisp game to win, and I think they're just that we've tried to bait, not even bait them, but just try to get them to talk about Ohio State throughout the season, and they just haven't really bit. Maybe now that it is actually game week, they will, but like I'm not holding my breath that there'll be any juicy quotes or anything like that coming from this week. But I mean, it's still it's going to be an exciting game. Like I mean, last year's game didn't really mean much to Michigan in the sense of like what their season was ending no matter what. I mean, this year there's a lot on the line, and it's going to be add a little extra element intrigue to this year's game, and it should be fun. I'm ready for Saturday right now. I'm going to say that right now. Yeah, let's fast forward.
All right, well, Ryan, I'm sure your colorful writing will make up for any lack of juicy quotes in your stories this week that fans can read on MLive.com/Wolverines. Thanks for listening.